Well, thank you, everyone. For 2009's fiscal year, TU National had total revenue of $26.7 million, up 24% from the $21.6 million in the prior year. Total expenses were up to $22.8 from $20.9 million, or 9% from 2008, giving us net income before investment losses of $3.8 million. So let's talk about these increases for a little bit. That 24% revenue increase is really a timing issue due to some foundation revenue that was for the 2010 fiscal year coming in at the end of 2009. The growth in expenses, however, is really what I like to consider TU National's true growth, and that entire growth was driven through our restricted program dollars, mainly through government grant money during the 2009 fiscal year. This is a rather noteworthy accomplishment for the organization, because during the 2009 fiscal year, our largest government grant, which is awarded by the wonderful state of California, sat frozen for the bulk of the fiscal year due to their own state's fiscal problems. So our other field staff in various states had found ways to tap money from their local agencies to allow that growth to continue. Now, what I want to make sure you understand that this slide doesn't necessarily convey correctly is that TU has not walked away from this economic downturn without its own sets of bumps and bruises. As you can tell, our endowment has had its fair share over the last couple of years, but the other part of our operations, which is our general operations, has also had its bumps and bruises. We have seen unrestricted revenue decrease from the CCF and events lines of our operations, and that required us for the 2009 fiscal year to freeze staff salaries for the organization in order to balance our budget. For the 2009 and for the 2010 fiscal year, the TU staff have not had raises in order to make everything balance. The good news is we haven't had to fire anybody, unlike some of our fellow environmental organizations. So while it's not the world's perfect picture for TU, I do want to say we've managed to come through this so far very well. And I like to think we did manage to accomplish through some very tight budgeting the capability to keep all of our staff on, even as we watch our unrestricted dollars decrease. Now, as always, we get measured by our efficiency, and the big question of what does my $1 get me at TU? Well, 84 cents of your dollar go directly to the ground to our programs. The other 16 cents get split between fundraising and administration. So the other piece of 2009 we always want to talk about is, well, how did our chapters and councils fare with this? And you're going to watch the revenue decrease to 8.1 million from 8.6. Now you look at this, and when I got these numbers, I start to panic, and you start to piece through it. And the good news is this decrease really was a timing issue for one of our larger chapters, who in 2008 ran through a rather large government grant program and some outflow as well that they did not repeat in 2009. So when you dig into the details here, while we see an overall decrease, a lot of it was driven by that one instance and not from an overall pattern through the chapters and councils and a decrease in their revenue for the year. The good news is, as you look further down, the donated volunteer time has increased dramatically this year, and Duke Welter will go into a little bit more detail about that during his presentation. Now, the question I always get when I present these is, Hillary, it's wonderful. We get $8 million from our chapters and councils, but what does a TU chapter and council look like? So here's your breakdown. I like to use revenue, and my favorite indicator, obviously, is the IRS's benchmark for when they give you the honor of filing in detail what you do every year. And so for 2009, we had 289 chapters and 20 councils report revenue less than $25,000. We had 49 chapters and 9 councils report revenue from $25,000 to $100,000, and we had 8 chapters and 5 councils report revenue of over $100,000. And our median total revenue for chapters was $8,597. To give you a quick brush up on your high school algebra, median is the middle point of your data range, so it's not quite your average. It's the point where you get equal number of data points below and above. On the council side, you have median revenue of $12,359. So where does this revenue come from? Bulk of the chapter and council revenue comes from events, followed by government grants, individual giving, including workplace programs that several of you participate in, Other revenue of 10%, and I'd like to note hidden in that other revenue are a couple of rather lucrative license plate programs in a couple of these states. So if your state doesn't have one, I would highly recommend you corner our staff from the state of Montana and North Carolina and maybe talk to them about their program and how it works. A couple of the other items I pulled out here, while small, are still noteworthy. 4% of the revenue for our chapters and councils come from the national rebate. Another 2% from the Embrace to Stream program, for those of you who apply for Embrace to Stream grants. And the last 1% come from your fellow TU chapters and councils. And it's kind of nice to think about the fact that about $80,000 flowed between chapters and councils last year as you each supported one another's programs. Now, of course, before I end and hand this back over to Chris to tell you what all this money accomplished last year, let's talk about the expenses for the chapters and councils and their kind of breakdown. 70% of the expenses for the chapters and councils came in on the program side. Reported 19% spent on fundraising and another 11% spent on admin. So, all things considered, given the economic conditions, 2009 wasn't a bad year. So thank you.